Roy Hodgson has verbally agreed to become Palace manager next season. We'll be discussing that. We got Zaha contract update and other transfer news with a bid apparently going in for the centre half that Palace have been linked to for the past few weeks. Let's get started with Palace news. What's going on, people? Welcome to Live Palace News. I'm joined by AJ today to discuss all the latest Palace stuff. There's a lot that's been going on today. If you haven't already seen what's been going on with the paper talk, don't worry, we'll keep you up to date. And if you have, we want to hear from you as well in terms of your thoughts, because we've got manager update, we've got key play update, we've got incoming, outgoing, injuries, everything that you can ask for. Some positive, some negative. But before we do get started, as always, if you do enjoy the show, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, people, to help us grow the channel. AJ, my bro, how are you doing, man? We're doing it.
I'm good,
today,
man.
But
man.
Then never. Let's just say that. And there's a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, when it comes to the Fellas fan base and the back in the nest, you know I'm here, bro. Anytime.
Yeah,
we're always round the clock for you people.
Exactly. Even behind the scenes, we're working when we're not on live streams and recording videos as well. It never stops with Palace. And today's big news is, of course, with Roy Hodgson. So the latest reports were coming out yesterday relating to Roy Hodgson potentially being announced today, which it hasn't happened. But we got another update today from Sky Sports saying the following: that Roy Hodgson has verbally agreed in place to continue as manager next season. That is according to Sky Sports. However, a deal is yet to be signed off by the 75-year-old who will remain at Selhurst Park next season. It's only a verbal agreement so far. Palace bosses have taken the time to assess various options and consider long-term options as part of the due diligence, but ultimately Hodgson's popularity with some of the key players has in the squad has helped with the decision making. So Sky Sports saying that we have interviewed candidates for long-term approaches. Some of those candidates we spoke about on Live Palace News for about 2 months. By the end of it, it seems like with 1 week to go before pre-season starts, Roy Hodgson is the answer. AJ, for you, is that the right call from the board if he does get announced, which is looking more likely than ever?
Good question. It's not my first choice. I'm not upset by the choice. I just feel like we could have organized this a bit quicker and sorted it out a bit faster, and more importantly, let us know what was going on. Obviously, when Roy came in to wrap up the season, we looked better, we looked more comfortable, and we looked a lot more confident. As long as Roy is definitely 110% up to the job, and for me, as long as we back it and back him and give him a squad to work with, then I'll back him. But I don't know, man. I just feel like there's some big boy names out there that we missed out on. And I feel like there are some big boy opportunities that we missed out in terms of, big draw names that we could have potentially helped us push on. But at the same time, Roy's no idiot. He knows the club, he knows the fans, he knows the players, and it seems that they definitely want to work for him, and, he can get the best out of him. The only problem is, how long can Roy hang on for? That's where my head is at, because I don't know. We're going to be doing this in a year's time and then going for another summer of uncertainty. I really bloody hope not, because in all fairness, man, we got to start putting our fingers out, man, and being a bit more serious. But at the end of the day, if Roy takes the job and we can build a squad around him, like I said, I'll back him. I'll still cheer him come, first home game of the season. I'll be there no matter what.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is going to, not that anyone I know is going to seriously change their thoughts about going next season because Roy's staying. Especially, I think more people have become fans of Roy due to how we ended the season. But as you mentioned, we are going to be in this situation next year, regardless. It might be in the situation earlier if he doesn't survive the full season. We might be in the situation at the same time next year, talking about another manager being announced. Well, why do you think they didn't go for the long-term approach? Of course, you wouldn't know in particular, but some of the names out there, Graham Potter, Fonseca, Adi Hassa, there's been lots of names mentioned. What do you think is going to be different from this time next year to now? Because some of the names out there, they have Premier League experience, but we still couldn't attract them or we didn't go for them. So what do you think we're waiting on? Why is it Roy for one more year?
It's a good question, actually. I mean, maybe the terms weren't right. That's the only thing I could think of. Maybe certain certain managers walked through the door and they made certain demands, which maybe Parish and the rest of the board couldn't abide to. Because obviously, it's no secret that we're working on this stand. It's no secret that we're not the biggest turners in terms of money's being spent. But I don't know, man. It's a hard one to put the finger on. You know, when you look at some of these other names and other managers, they've been part of projects in a lower level. They've been at lower level clubs. I mean, you know, the Premier League will attract Premier League standard of managers. And long-term approach, I'd rather see us kind of going in for that option now. I don't know if it's going to be like a very watered-down version of what Arsenal went through when they just kept hold of Wenger for too long while they moved into the Emirates, and then eventually they kind of just progressed. But it's a hard one, man. I guess the only thing about this appointment is it is uninspiring. We know it's a safe pair of hands, and we know the man knows what he's doing, but I feel like it's very uninspiring. It's very underwhelming. And after all that drama that we went through over the past couple of weeks / months, I was kind of hoping for something a little bit more exciting. But at the same time, maybe, you know, think about how annoyed and frustrated we are as fans and we're not hearing anything. Imagine what it's like for somebody going for an interview. They might walk into that room. Steve Parish might say, all right, well, what do you want to do? They'll turn around and say, I want to do this. I want to do that player. I need this position. I need to spend a good 60, 70 million. I need to move on that player and that player. Maybe Steve Parish or Dougie Freedman turn around and said, well, I guess what? We don't have it. You know, that's the only reason why I can really justify why any of these other names are out there. And we didn't really go for them because there are some definitely more exciting names on the board and that are available. And hearing that it could potentially be in Brendan Rodgers, who ended up at Celtic. And that's no disrespect to Celtic, but Celtic ain't no Premier League standard in terms of the management setup. I don't care what anyone says. And, you know, maybe he potentially went for Steve Cooper. I can't even begin to understand the logic behind that one. And with Fonseca and Graham Potter, all right, Graham Potter weren't my first choice. But at the end of the day, he kind of just gets me a little bit more excited about long-term future and long-term goals. Maybe it buys the board more time to do stuff in the background, maybe prep something a little bit early for next year, but maybe I'm giving them a little bit too much credit because so far, the summer's been abysmal, man. It's been very, very underwhelming and disappointing. And you can only just see on, you know, social media, the response to it. People are fed up. People are annoyed, you know, and then after all that, giving us a very underwhelming leak talking about how, well, Roy looks like he's going to accept the job subject to him accepting terms. So there's even an argument to suggest that he's not even accepted it yet. So imagine if he comes back from holiday, the missus puts a bit of pressure on him and he turns around and says, you know what, boys, I'm good to go. Or, you know what, boys, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. Because remember, he is at retirement age in the real world. If he was in my job role, he would be retired right now. He'd be literally collecting a state pension. So I don't understand, man. I don't understand the obsession with the ownership for getting Roy. It kind of makes me believe that there maybe is a narrative that he might be a yes man where all these other managers might potentially challenge the board. Time will tell.
Well, according to the report, it suggested that the players really liked the football under Hodgson. So I feel like that's one of the aspects to it. But my theory about the whole situation, it goes like this. I feel like when the season ended, we wanted to keep Roy. But we were also tested. This is a theory. This is not the truth. This is my theory. But I feel like we were also testing the waters with other long-term managers because there were some very good names out there that we could have potentially went and got. However, even whilst interviewing those managers, I don't feel like we were willing to go out of the way unless there was something drastically amazing about one of the interviews, such as a manager came and we were like, you know what, this is the manager, is it? I don't think we were ever going to change from Roy Hodgson. That's what it feels like anyways to the build-up of this. So Hodgson has always been in the background, but we interviewed other managers just to see if there's anything special out there rather than going for it. Because I don't feel like we made promises such as a new manager. Well, I don't think we were desperate for another long-term manager. I feel like we had the interviews for the sake of having the interviews to see, you know, what the other managers saying and whether they like our plans. Because right now, in honesty, for a new manager coming into Palace, I don't think we are as ambitious enough in terms of transfer spend, in terms of pushing to the next level. And you might find agreement and disagreement in this, but I feel like the main stand building is a key aspect to it. So I feel like that's why from the start, when the season ended till now, that's why I feel like we wanted to keep Roy, because we know what he can offer to the team. Even though if it is negative football, you're more than likely to stay up with him. So our whole approach has been, what I think anyways, it has been talk to other managers for the sake of talking to other managers, but don't put yourself out there. Don't make this a, project that you want to sell. It's more a case of, do you want to come work for Crystal Palace? You're going to have a limited budget, but it's a Premier League team. We got here and there. I don't think we're ever serious. Ever serious. What changes next season? Maybe next season, the actual thing that does change is that this main stand question marks are out of the way. It's a bit more clear. And then from there, we move forward. But saying that, we're not building a new stadium. I know main stand costs a lot, but we're not building a new stadium. For a stand to have us in such a chokehold, and we've got 2 billionaires at the football club, as well as John Textor, as well as Steve Parish at the football club, it just seems like we just want to do everything slow and steady. Now, there's pros and negatives to it. When you go slow and steady, you know that you're not taking as much risk, so you can go along with it. And in the long term, if things go south, you didn't take that much risk, so you're in a safer boat if we do end up getting relegated. But the problem is the Premier League is getting more ruthless than ever. And there's 2 question marks in my head right now. Yes, we play some brilliant football under Roy Hodgson, arguably better than Patrick Vieira ever played, throughout the season, especially in the second season. The way we ended the season, scored goals, didn't concede that many as well. It was lovely. It was better than what we saw for the majority of the season. My issue is this. Roy gave a lot of credit to Vieira as well. The players gave a lot of credit to Vieira. Now that you've had this break, as well as pre-season, is Roy going to be able to sustain that over 38 games next season? I'm not too sure. That's for us to watch and those questions to be answered. And the second thing is, what happens now with the transfers? Because if we're going this all-out safe route, there's no guarantee that we can stay up in the Premier League. We still, look, for the majority of these live Palace news, we've been coming on here and we've been talking about players being linked with a move away rather than players coming in. And all along, we have said that the manager shouldn't impact that as much unless it's the likes of Graham Potter or so. But regardless, even if it's Graham Potter, we need another forward. That's not going to change. We need another right back. But despite that, there hasn't been anything really concrete. I know we don't have to sign players so far right now because there's still a bit of time till the season starts. But it hasn't been, it feels like a very mediocre, I feel like we'll be happy for a very mediocre season just for the sake of a new main stand being built. And then next season, I honestly don't know what's really going to change apart from maybe the main stand becomes concrete. Because with the ownership that we have right now, it doesn't seem like they're willing to spend money. The only way we're going to spend money is if we sell some of these players and reinvest that back into the squad. Now, if that's the case, why are we not doing it this season? Why are we doing it next season? I really don't understand the strategy. Maybe we'll see the transfers coming in a few weeks' time. But I just feel like, long story short, we spoke to other managers. That's what it feels like anyways. It's just to hear what they say, but we didn't really sell a proper plan where we can convince the Graham Potter or Fonseca to come in. And if there was any conversation involved, I don't think Palace was willing to go for it. That's what I'm sensing. I feel like Roy Hodgson was in the back of our minds, and we let him have a holiday, and no other manager impressed us. So here we are. But let us know what you guys think in the comment section. I'm going to go to the comments right now to hear your thoughts as well. Why can't we get a proper manager? Mukhtar says. Eva says keep Roy for a season until the funds for the main stand are finished. Next year, bringing a new manager when he knows the budget they will have. So that's what I feel like is our approach. But
I have a question to that, D. Yeah. I have a question to that, right? And maybe I'm not looking at it long term, or maybe it's because it's late in the evening. I don't know, but the stand's going to get built regardless, whether we're in the Premier League, Championship, God knows what. By the time that's done. So I'm assuming that the funds are either about to be put in place or the funds are in that for already. How is that affecting the team budget? Like, do you see what I'm saying? How does that affect one window?
Well, according to Parish, the funds were there regardless. So even if you get relegated, this main stand is being built. The ownership have basically put that money aside. They put the money forward and put that money aside. And I think it's going to cost a bit more because of COVID and what happened. But I can't give you the specific details about that because I'm not too sure. And that's another question mark. I wonder if there's going to be any other excuses after this main stand work starts. Is there going to be an excuse, we have to repay them new main stand? That's what it feels like with Palace. There's a never-ending excuse always going on. So that's my biggest question mark. I pray to God that doesn't happen because we can't be, building this new main stand. Then afterwards make another excuse. We have to pay that off. And then afterwards stop with the excuses. If you don't have money, which we do have the money, but if there's an ownership problem in terms of who can trust what, who has a say. That's been clear, and we've seen in reports, etc. But I feel like the structure, as I said, the structure of Palace right now stinks. So I don't know what exactly it is, but it seemed like whether we got relegated this season or not, that main stand was going to be built. So I don't know how much of an impact that has on the transfer fee. Luke says I only want Balogun. We'll talk about transfers anyways in just a second. There's a lot. There's also injury updates. Massive player potentially out injured for several weeks. We'll be talking about that in a second. But let's stick with Roy. Send in your thoughts about the Roy situation. Wayne says Roy football was good taking over from Vieira. It was like a good blend of both styles. I was just saying I hope we don't revert back to the negative tactics of previously. Hopefully we back him. And I think that's the most important thing. And I'll ask you this, AJ. Of course, we'll have another reaction. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to not miss out on future Paris content when Roy is officially announced. We don't know yet when that will be. But let's say that Roy does join the squad. We know what we saw of him in the last 10 games or so. What would you realistically expect going into next season from Roy? Because in the past, in the cup competitions, that's been one of the biggest downfalls. He hasn't taken the cup competition seriously. But maybe he goes for it now because he's towards the end of his career. I don't think after this 1 year deal, he's going to be offered another year. Like, he should go for it, especially in the cup competition. Do you expect an improvement in cups, maybe in league? Like, what's your expectation for next season? Early one.
It's a good question. I mean, he was the first one to turn around and say this club is good enough to be finishing in the top 10 with a few quality additions. So I'm going to hold him to that. At the end of the day, just because he's Roy doesn't mean I don't hold him to a certain standard. So there is going to be some expectations as far as I'm concerned. There's two things that's actually dawned on me. A, there's going to be a full preseason under Roy, because all Roy's job last season was to turn the squad around and pick up enough results for us to stay up. This year, he's going to be starting from the very beginning of the race. And with a full preseason under his belt and an opportunity for him to really get his teeth into it, what kind of style is he going to implement? Very good question. That'll be interesting to see. I really hope he doesn't throw it all away for the sake of some kind of vanity thing. That's got to be said. But then that follows me up to my next point, or my next question is, what happens if it goes wrong? What happens if we're sitting 20th in October? Is Roy going to get sacked then? Then what's the plan? Because it's not to say we're building long-term here. If it starts going left quite quickly, which it can do in many various football clubs, what's the contingency for that? Because I don't think there is one. It's an interesting point, man. I don't know.
If we kind of try,
and I want a cup run, man. I want a cup run bad. Yeah. Like, you have no idea, man. League Cup, FA Cup, I don't care which one. Both. One of them, I'm nice. Like, we need something, man.
Yeah. So about the cup run, let's talk about, of course, I think every one of us here would like a cup run. But Roy himself said it on the overlap when he was interviewed by Gary Neville that this squad should be pushing to finish in the top 10 next season. And I've said this before. That's why I ideally wanted Roy to leave now, because it would have been good for him to end on a high. But next season, my objective is we need to push for that top 10, because if the manager himself was saying it with a few decent additions, which I hope that the club would make. If the club doesn't make it, that's another situation. But Roy said himself that this squad should be aiming for top 10. Is that what you're aiming for in terms of league position finishes? I know it's very early. We're still 26th of June. There's going to be transfers maybe coming in, going out as well. But if he was to join right now as it stands, I want him to get top 10. If he doesn't get top 10 next season and a bad cup run, I think that's been a failure. For me, the barrier needs to be just more than just staying up. That's what it feels like, though. It feels like with this approach, by getting Roy, the club will be happy about it. Maybe Roy wouldn't. Maybe Roy wants to achieve more. But realistically, I think the club would be happy about staying up. And then there's only so many seasons that you can just try to aim to stay up until one season it catches you and boom, you're gone like that. And that's what I'm a bit worried about. But in terms of league position finishes, do you think Roy should be aiming for top 10? Or are you expecting more of a mid-table finish with the squad?
Top 10 for sure. Top 10 upwards, because A, he said it. Like, you got to back your words now, man. The players should be a little bit better. Obviously, the squad still needs to be built and teams around us are building stronger. I mean, friggin' hell. Bournemouth bought Justin Kluivert the other day. Like, you know what I mean? You got to start looking at that as a warning sign and just think to yourself, boy, so we got to see something, man. I think, yeah, we got to aim for a top 10 finish, because remember, those clubs that finished on top of us are certain rival teams. I'm not going to name them, but they're going to have European competition to worry about, Then the cup games, then the league games. We need to maximize on that opportunity. because we're only going to be playing 1 game a week for the foreseeable. So maybe 2, depending on what day of the week you're kicking off on playing on. So I don't see why we can't push for it, man. I'm getting sick and tired of seeing dead ballers like being put into the squad for certain games because he's more concentrated on the league. If you think the squad is that talented, utilize it. Let's go for it.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this as well. With the time off, I was thinking about there's going to be 8 teams in European competition next year. I want us to take this. This is the perfect opportunity. There's the likes of, as you said, the Brightons and all these other teams, Aston Villa, that's going to be playing European football. Maybe Chelsea ain't. Maybe that is a benefit to them. Maybe they might take I think they'll still go for the league rather than just the cup. If you're talking about 8 or 9 teams being in cup competition already, I think a cup like a Carabao Cup or FA Cup under Hodgson, we need to take it more seriously. We do next season because this is a perfect opportunity to kick on. We saw it this past season with Newcastle. If we didn't lose to Newcastle in the away tie in the Carabao Cup, we could have had Southampton. We could have potentially went to the finals. And that's what it means. Like, we need to take cup competition a bit more seriously. But let's read some of the comments as well. If you're just joining now, make sure to leave a like and subscribe and send in your thoughts about Roy Hodgson potentially joining. It seems like, according to reports based on Sky Sports and yesterday as well, I think it was Times that reported it, Hodgson has verbally agreed a deal. A deal is yet to be signed, but it's looking more likely than ever. Let's go through some of the comments. Let's go here. Alexander said, any way to get any panelists to come in live? So when Roy Hodgson is actually officially announced, we'll open up the lines because we've got a bit more other news to go through today as well, where you guys can join us and have your say. But because he hasn't been officially announced, we'll go into a bit more depth and hear from you guys, especially open up the lines as well. But for today, we're not planning to because, as you said, it's a bit late as well. And we've got loads of other interesting stuff happening. Funny enough, it's not just only Roy news today that came out. And Mitch says, my worry is that we'll saw players not replace them properly and Roy will be forced into old, boring survival tactics. I never blame Roy for that style when we needed to play it. And yeah, has it changed your perspective on Roy based on what he done in the last 10 games? Because looking at it in hindsight now, the squad that he had towards the end of his time, it wasn't exciting. It was one of the oldest squads in the Premier League. There wasn't that much creativity there. Saying that, at times he did play as a out position. That's what I felt like anyways towards the end of time. But now, Eze played fantastically under Roy. Do you think it's a case of Roy can play exciting football? It's just the case that when he was last permanent manager at Palace, he just didn't have the players. And we saw in the last 10 games that when he does have the players, we can go for it. Or you don't think like that, AJ?
No, I think he definitely can play a better style of football. I think what you got to look at is it's the quality of squad he's got now. Back then we had an older sort of brick wall of a team, a little bit rough around the edges. He didn't have as many creative outlets. It was kind of just Zaha and vibes back then. Whereas now, Zaha isn't even necessarily going to be the main. He's not been the main threat last season, and I don't think he particularly will be next season either. Depending, obviously, whether he stays or not. You've got Olise, you got Eze, you got Lerma to that equation. You got the core that's going to be a lot more solid. You got a bit of a younger, a little bit more exciting team to work with. To be fair, so I think that will kind of give him something to work with, and obviously that will give us something to be excited about as well. There are more attacking threats and more attacking outlets in the squad, and the old guard of players are quite limited to what he would have had previously anyway. So that bit I'm not too worried about in terms of him sort of sticking to the old guard or maybe going down to a defensive route because he doesn't have that kind of squad anymore. Different setup, different layout.
Yeah. Isaac says we can do well with Hodgson, but it's not for the future. I think that's what people are frustrated about. Guy says, why don't people wait and see how things go before pissing and moaning? Eva says Adi Hutter is good for the Premier League. Oli, not surprised with the board, but disappointed with them. So Roy has his favourites. Some players won't get a look in, says Mukhtar. Yeah, so
actually, do you know what? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if I particularly agree with that narrative anymore, because now that I've seen Roy in the last 10 games, there wasn't many players he didn't actually use. Even Ahamado got a couple little silly cameos, but over a span of a 38-game season, if we don't make any sort of major additions, depending on what kind of, because you get injured players that come in and out, I'm not too sold on that, I think he was a little bit more stubborn the last time around, but it seems that the last 10 games going in, excuse me, he was a little bit more open to using certain players. So I don't know, if I agree with that narrative this time around. But then that depends on what he sees in preseason. So just to kind of see what Mukhtar's coming from, he's got half a point, but I don't know, Roy looks like he's a little bit more open-minded this time around. There's a little bit more vibes coming out of him. And I don't know if it's because he's maybe got Paddy in his ear, who's got a little bit more of understanding of who's around and who's doing what bits. Because having a year or two away is a long time, in football. So I don't know. I feel a little bit more open around that.
It feels like the links between Paddy being there and what happened. You guys might have forgot about this, but Stephen Reid, he was also a coach at Palace. And then I remember when he left Palace, maybe that wasn't a real reason, but when he left Palace, that's when things started to go downhill. And there was question marks even at that time where, was it just, Reid? I think his name was Stephen Reid. I know his 100% surname was Reid. I think it is Stephen Reid.
Yeah, that was the old Blackburn player, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Stephen Reid, he was a baller,
From as well. Yeah. So when he left, we had a similar downfall. Do you think having Paddy McCarthy there is a reason why? Of course, Roy manages it, so you have to give credit to him. But having Paddy McCarthy there, and CPAD should maybe seeing this and might be thinking, that Paddy and Roy combination as well as Ray Lewington, I think that could be the trick. Because we didn't have Paddy McCarthy last time, being a coach. I think Paddy McCarthy can be that connection between the younger players and also the more experienced players. And, he can be the communicator between them. I think Roy's, we've seen it. Eze has come out, said it publicly, one of our best players to the end of the season, that Roy's been fantastic with him. I think Olise is happy as well. But do you think Paddy McCarthy is that link that we don't really talk about as much, who has helped Roy along the way?
Could be. I don't like the idea of Paddy McCarthy taking over or particularly coaching the team going forward. But in terms of having that kind of internal, in the know kind of character around that can kind of just put a little word in your ear for a certain player, or if a certain player in the youth team stepping up or, deserves a couple minutes, I'm all for it, man. Yeah, it's got to have some kind of positive influence. I mean, when I saw him sort of take the squad against Arsenal, I was a little bit like, kind of wrote him off a little bit. But having the combination of the two is actually not the worst. It obviously paid off. So there's got to be something in that.
Yeah. For me, as I said at the start of the show, if you're just joining now, I'm not hugely upset. I'm not excited. I'm just thinking about what's next already. Like, that's what I'm thinking about, what's next. Maybe we'll see as the season goes on, but what's next? Like, what's going to change in terms of long-term project? Because ideally, I wanted Roy to leave on a high note, because I feel like ending the season with 10 games to go, taking over from Vieira's work is kind of different to starting with preseason, new transfers, little break in here and there. But then again, I'm not going to get mad. I'll be real. I'm not going to get mad because I think I know what the club are trying to do. I don't personally, I feel like it's not enough in terms of the main stand being a massive excuse that we don't go get another manager. We don't bring in, we don't spend the money that we need to spend or strengthen the position that we need to strengthen. I don't think that's a valid excuse just because of one new stand. Maybe you might say I'm naive thinking that, but I don't agree with that. But saying that, we ended the season well. We'll see. If he continues to play football like that next season, then I think we'll be fine. But then again, even if he does, the biggest question mark is, well, he's gone. After the season, he's 100% gone. I don't think we'll give him another year. And that's the thing. Like, we're back to square one. So why go back to square one now? I guess another season of Premier League football and building new main stand could, improve our facilities and maybe our revenues, and that's a help like that. But it's just like, you just want to see a bit of ambition. You're seeing even the likes of even Bournemouth now with their new owners. Their new owners went on TalkSport and said that, they're willing to spend money. They brought in another manager. Their approach, maybe it doesn't work out, but sacking Gary O'Neill and then bringing in someone from abroad, it maybe does, but they still got an ambition. That's what you want to see after 10 years in the Premier League. But for us, it's about, I don't know, as a fan, AJ, I don't know about you, but me, as a fan, I want to see this club progress. I want to see this club go for it. I don't know. Win a trophy is the best case scenario. Like, I want us to win a trophy. Look at what happened to West Ham. They won a European trophy. Say what you want, but I think every Palace fan would be over the moon with that. I want us to go progress like that. But the reason why West Ham done it is you have to spend money as well. And no matter how good of a coach you have to spend money. You have to improve the squad year on year on. West Ham spent about £170 million last season. Yes, they won a European trophy, but they spent a lot of money. Now, we don't need to. I don't want the club to spend £100 million, but there's a few decent options out there. We'll see if it happens. But Balogun, for example, it'll cost like £30 to £35 million. But I think that'd be a decent option. Or like a Sasha Bowie, a right back. We need to strengthen to position. But despite that, I still don't have the faith that they will do that. And that's what I'm saying. It's like protecting their own assets rather than progressing the club. Like, how do you find a balance? Because yes, you want to make the club sustainable, but as a fan, you want to push on as well, especially when other teams are pushing on. Brighton are playing European football. Brighton are being linked with top quality players. And we're still here, June the 26th. And we're talking about Roy Hodgson staying on, which is not really a surprise. But no other major names being announced. Guy Carez was one that went quiet. I mean, the player that we're closest with right now is a centre-half, which doesn't make any sense, according to reports. Because that's the position we strengthen the most.
You know, so mad about literally what you just said. If we bring in Bowie and bring in Balogun, let's say that's what, 55, 60 million pounds. That's me done, you know. I will go into the stadium, I will sit in my seat and I'll just do my little claps and I'll keep it moving and I'll cheer the boys on.
100%.
Because that is enough.
Yeah.
Because that's enough to improve the squad. And that's enough for me to turn around and say, yeah, that's progress. We're not demanding the Man City money. It'd be nice, but we're not demanding the Newcastle money. Like, it just seems that everyone else is pushing to extreme lengths to get the best quality type of players through the door, and we're just scraping charity shop movements out here. Like, let's be honest here, man. Even if the owners aren't invested, they know that their investment needs to be protected by, i.e., putting more money into it. That's how you know, unfortunately, you have to spend money to make money. But any Stevie Wonder can see the squad needs improving in certain key areas, man, and we're out here focusing in all the wrong places. Because remember, we bring Lerma through the door, right? And yeah, going back to what I said, if you bring Balogun, Bowie, and let's say Wilf does or does not sign a deal, the squad's all right for me, you know. At that point, I'm not moaning. I don't even need nothing in January. We don't need nothing in January. I would happily sit the rest of the season. Hell, I'd come onto the stream after every game with a big grin on my face, and I'm like, I'm nice, we're cooking, don't worry. But when you leave people at the loop, bruv, and you're telling man you don't got money and you're leaking out to your press links that, oh, we're not got money, but then you're linking with a £21 million defender that is in a position we ain't even got covered like that, or we don't need covered like that. Where's the correlation? There's no correlation here. Like, even from a director of football's perspective, Doogie must be man enough to be opening up his mouth and spotting that there's obviously big holes in the team. Everyone else can see it. Why can't these men see it? Their job is to sit in there and make these decisions. But this brother is collecting a £2 million bonus every year. £2 million, D. D, give me £2,000 a year. I'll do that job for you to identify who needs to be in that squad. Hell, I'll do it on a budget. Like, but it's like these men don't get it. Like, I don't get it, man. There's a lot of funny, crazy stuff. Like, the decision making at this club sometimes just is mind-boggling.
Yeah. So okay, let's move on to the next bit of story. I think that links well to it, which is from Tutto Mercato that a first offer of €25 million from Crystal Palace has arrived on the desk of Serie A club directors for Perr Schuurs, who's been a centre-half, who's been linked with Palace over the past few weeks or so. However, Schuurs is currently waiting to see if a more ambitious club will choose to make the move before committing to the London team. So it seems like we've sent a €25 million, so equivalent to, I believe, £21 million on a centre-half. Now, am I wrong in saying that if we're not selling Gavey, why do we need, or Anderson, why do we need another centre half? Chris Richards doesn't exist. Even Tompkins, what a love goal, it doesn't exist. Like, it doesn't make any sense for a club that's meant to be on tight budget. It's like your tire bursting on the road and you're going and you buy wipers instead. Like, what? You're not going to move. You need to buy tires. Your tires are gone. Buy new tires. You already got wipers. That's fine. You got wipers. You can deal with it. So I don't understand this £21 million for another centre half. Because as it stands right now, Gahey, Tottenham, they're not willing to match his price. They're looking at other targets. That's according to the reports. Arsenal are close to Timbers. Manchester United, I don't think they've ever been that interested. Chelsea, there's nothing like. There's no clubs out there that are like that I'm worried about coming for Gahey. And Anderson, there's been Newcastle, but apart from that, Newcastle, the reports were suggesting all along that Palace's asking price is way too high. So it seems like both of our centre halves are not in that big of a risk of leaving. So why are we actually putting offers when it seems like none of them are leaving? We need a right back or a striker. Why are we putting that much money for a centre half? How many centre halves does one need? You renewed James Tompkins as well. If you didn't renew him, then I'll be like, cool, you didn't renew James Tompkins, but you renewed that as well. Am I crazy? Am I thinking crazy? What's the thinking around that? Can you at least make it sense for me? Because right now it doesn't make any sense. Why would go?
Do you know how you flip that? Do you know how you flip that and make it make sense? Do you know how you flip that and make that make sense? Take that £21 million and go to Galatasaray and go get Bowie. Take that same £21 million to Galatasaray, they will rip your arm off for the position and the player that we need in that position. But Steve Parish is sitting there doing his little yoga aerobics in Soho and that, talking about, we don't need him. Let's go get that Dutch player that nobody's heard of, and let's go and spend a decent, for Crystal Palace, a fat chunk of change on him. Or, like, what is happening? Bro, this is some Black Mirror madness. You know, I feel like somebody's running a social experiment on me or something. Like, I don't understand, bro, because this is wild. Nothing about it makes sense. If we were on the cusp of losing one of our centre-backs, there would be probably sitting there going, you know what, all right, cool. But nobody's going anywhere, big man, because nobody's paying the money. Like, I'll tell you what, that same £21 million, chuck another 10 on that, you can go get Balogun. Or, I'll tell you what, who is it? Torino he's at. Spend that 21 million, go to Roma and go get Belotti. Banging striker. Like, what is going on? Yeah, this needs to be. I hope this is paper talk because none of it's making sense to me. Not one bit of it.
Mercato is a reliable site over in Italy, and you know they've been reporting all along that we were interested, and now they're saying that we've actually submitted an offer. So, what do you guys think about it? Defender, centre half, £21 million on the desk. We're waiting on the player. Are you shocked? Are you surprised? Are you happy? Are you confused like I am? Let us know in the live comment section. And if you're watching on replay as well, let us know in the comment section down below. As always, if you're enjoying it, make sure to smash the like button, people. Only takes a second of your time. Let's go through some of the comments. Gregory says, people just finished reading all of the comments so far. Have some patience. Success in the EPL long-term takes time, especially for any team without Jillian to recklessly spend, says Gregory. Alexander says, AJ and D, I think you're both discounting Dougie. I just don't understand why we'll need another centre half as it stands right now to put an offer anyway.
I'll tell you why. Yeah, I'll tell you why. And inclusive to my man's point before that was, bro, we've seen teams come up in a year, 2 years and overtake us and progress faster than us. Is it me not having enough patience for me to not sit there and look at that and think to myself, well, if they've got it patterned, why have we not? We've seen clubs with smaller capacities than us, or clubs with nowhere near as enough Premier Leaguers, because a lot of people like to highlight the last 10, 12 years in the Premier League, right? But at the end of the day, I'm not discrediting that, or I'm not dismissing that. But when I see a club like a Brentford, a Bournemouth, or a Fulham, or whoever, who are constantly yo-yoing, progress, and move on to the next level and surpass us.
I wouldn't say Fulham.
I think
where did
Fulham finish last season?
Yeah. Okay, that's just one good season. I think Brentford and Brighton are more on the wavelength of surpass.
Even with that exact same, you know, I could dig up a couple of other examples, but at the end of the day, like, am I being disrespectful by demanding more or asking my club to show a little bit more ambition? Nobody's saying bankrupt the club here, Rude Boy. But at the end of the day, if you've got £21 million to spend on the centre half, why have we not got why can't we not cut a little bit of that and put towards the right back or the striker that we need? That is screaming pretty obvious at us. I do understand that people get fed up with the criticism, but the criticism doesn't come out of thin air. Like, people are wound up for a reason. I'm wound up for a reason. I'm happy to say patient, and I'm pretty sure if you go back and look at different various streams and after match reports, I've said I will back the club, I will support the decisions, but sometimes we do it the wrong way, or sometimes we can operate smarter. You ever heard the term work smarter, not harder? Same thing for me. I just feel like sometimes we just may put ourselves in these very awkward positions for no reason whatsoever. At the end of the day, I'm entitled to be wound up. And unfortunately, it does wind me up.
And there seems like a divide as well. I haven't been on Twitter as much.
For sure. I've seen it.
Every time I went on Twitter, like I go in for like literally a second and I see comments about the younger fans and the older fans. Are we ambitious? Are we not trying to progress? Some people are saying we've stayed in the Premier League 10 years. That's ambition for me. Some people are saying other teams are taking us. So I think this is since we got promoted to Premier League, I think the divide has started probably in Roy's last season or so. And I think it's grown ever since that. And I think the divide is happening between certain sections of the fan group is because it's a case of before everyone was united saying that we need to stay in the Premier League because we're doing this, we're doing that. But now that you've been in the Premier League for about 10 years, there's certain section of the fan group, and I think I'm one of them, who just wants to see a bit more, especially with the amount of wealth that our owners have. I want to see a bit more than just, have excuses every single year. I want us to push forward. But I also understand others that are happy with our current situation in terms of trying to stay up because they've seen, multiple administrations and this and that. And, there was an administration not that long ago, in 2010, basically. So that's not even that long ago, considering that we've been a Premier League club for 10 years. We turned around pretty quick. But it reaches a point where you look at the past and you appreciate what you have right now, or do you look at the past and look at what's been happening over the last 10 years, not going back to 2010, just happening what's been happening since we got promoted to Premier League, and say, when do we push on? Or when do we try to push on? We built new academy facilities, that's good. Building a new main stand. But it seems like other teams are doing what we're doing as well as trying to push on the field as well. It seems like we're picking one of the two. And that right now, the Premier League, back in the day, I think Premier League was better for these type of ownership groups where you have, I don't know, Harris or Texas or, the parishes, because it was a good investment to make. And Premier League clubs still probably are good investments to make. But I feel like nowadays, you can't treat a Premier League club like an investment. The Premier League has turned into a money game. The richest people in the world or countries at this point are taking over and are just trying to get one over each other. And if you treat it like slow and steady, I feel like it will catch up to us. That's my biggest fear. I don't think this current structure that we have in the long term is going to work out. That's my personal opinion. So next year, hopefully we do survive and push into top 10. But then after that, these teams like even Bournemouth with their new ownership group, they're looking to expand the stadium. They're looking to improve the new training facilities as well as spend. Newcastle, they're improving facilities as well. I know they got a big stadium, so not there, but they had the training ground facilities that needed improving. But I guess they got a country behind them. But my moral of the story is these clubs are doing what we're trying to do as well as improve the squad. So I don't think what we're doing is enough, even though in our own little bubble it feels good because step by step improve the new main stand, then improve this and that. But we just need a striker and a right back. And what makes it more annoying for me is that last season we didn't spend that much. If we spent a lot last season, I'll say fair enough. We brought in these players and we brought in some good players, but we didn't spend that much. So what is our budget? Because we signed Lerm on a free. I guess we'll see down the line. But can't we afford or can't we take a risk on a 30 to 35 million pound striker or another right back? Like, can't we take that risk? We don't need to spend 35 million pound on like 5 players. I'd rather go for one quality player and see if it works out. But it feels like we're not willing to take that risk. And that's where the ambitious side of it comes for me anyways. It's that every time it's a bit, let's just go for the cheaper or the option that we do know of rather than actually spend big on one player and sort that position out. Because the striker position, arguably the only striker that we've had in the Premier League that's been half decent for us is Benteke in his first season. Apart from that, in the last 10 years, we haven't been able to solve this position. It's been absolutely meh. But the problem is strikers come at a premium. So we have to pay a premium. That's the reality. Unless you go and do crazy, scouting. Guy Chris is one of them. But Guy Chris won't be cheap either. So, I don't know. I went on a little rant there. But the ambitious side of it, I hear both sides of the story. But I'm more on the wavelength of we need to try to become more ambitious. Otherwise, we'll get left behind. CPFC Plumber says, I've heard Steve Parish saying the same thing for the last 78 years in terms of revenue. 6th to 10th place Premier League club with the London factor, but are we really? That's why he talks about revenue. I guess with the new main stand that will be solved, then we'll see what happens. 2 previous administrations of White Palace now living within their means, as third would spell disaster. Clubs like Brighton have to sell players due to their huge £400 million debt. But Brighton have got a plan. They have to sell these players, and then afterwards they reinvest them. It's like the money glitch. They grow the other players, and then they sell them on. Isn't that what we're meant to do? If that's the case of what we're meant to do, why don't we get started with it now? Like, why are we waiting for another season? I guess maybe because these players know Roy and it's another safe pair of hands. Maybe we do that start of next season with another manager. But AJ, at what point would you expect the club to, start that approach? Because it seemed like we wanted to buy these younger players, develop them, and sell them on for higher value. Would you like that to happen this summer?
Yeah, but that is almost my rebuttal to a lot of people that kind of turn around and go, "Oh, well, what do you want the club to do? Oh, but look at Brighton." Well, at what point are we going to action that? Like, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, look, we were talking about Gay getting sold. I know Olise has been linked, but that's not probably going to happen. The same with Eze as well, and Anderson being sold. But we're still undervaluing them as a club. £50 million for Gay. I think it was like £30 million for Anderson. That's an undervalue in my book. Why are we not overpricing like the likes of Brighton? Because yes, Brighton overinflate and overprice their players. Granted, we don't have £400 million of debt. That I agree with and that I respect. But why are we not highly valuing our players at the right time? I think the only time I've ever seen this club highly over value our players was with Wilfried Zaha, because he's the key man. Apart from that, I've never really seen the club kind of turn around and say, "All right, you want this player? Here's the big boy number."
Well, we don't know.
And then
don't you think 50 mil? That was a decent deal.
True.
Well,
no, that is true.
I thought that was very good money as well. 30 million.
I'll tell you what, the Balassi one kind of ate me alive actually at the time. To be fair, that Balassi one hurt at the time. I can't lie, but this is the kind of benchmark we need to be at. And when we had that old guard of the squad at the time, what you got to understand is there wasn't any assets in the team to sell on anyway, at least for decent profit, apart from Zaha himself. And then we'd sold Zaha those 2-3 years ago. God knows what kind of position we would have been in as a football club. It's only, past 18 months, 2 years that we've kind of started transitioning into a bit more of a serious younger generation of potential that we are buying. So it's only now and going forward that we can start to see if there's any money in these players in terms of selling on and obviously reinvesting into the squad and all the rest of it. So, there's a catch-22 there. Plus, you've got to understand. I understand the profit and loss of the Premier League. I understand people have budgets and stuff. But, bro, we have 3 billionaires on the board, man. 3.
Well, I don't know if Texas is a billionaire, but we have 2 guaranteed.
Allegedly 3. Or let's say 2 and allegedly 3.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? I'm not, it's not, I'm not a billionaire, I'm not a millionaire. So I'm not in a position to start. No, in fact, no. If you're on a board of a football club like R1, you got to kind of put a bit of money in. And I'm not going to get into the speculation of who's not talking to who and who's not spending no money, because
they have before. That's what Harris and Blitz are putting their money before. John Tex had done it recently as well. But it's a case of, I don't know about you, but it feels like they're just putting in the money as like trying to get a return on their investment, which I get. It's not like they've got other teams, bro. It's not like just they've got Palace. They've got so many other teams, especially John Tex, we're seeing multi-club level. Harrison Blitzer, forget about football teams. They've got other, teams over in American sports as well. So I just feel like they see Palace as like investment rather than, I want to spend, I want to focus all my money on Palace, which is, I think, the problem that we're having. I think our owners right now, apart from Steve Parish, who just running the play, they're willing to invest their money in Crystal Palace and hope that it grows, which is sensible, rather than, chucking money and saying, let's spend £30 million on each striker.
But then this is where the criticism's got to be aimed in the right places, because I know for a fact Harrison Blitzer would rather give a supermax to somebody like Joel Embiid, or having to balance between James Harden and goddamn, what was his name that was there? Ben Simmons. And remember, the money that you're talking about with them kind of guys is astronomical in comparison to investing in one transfer window. Because in the NBA, those players against supermax contracts were like $100 to $200 million. a year or whatever it may be, right? Whereas with us, we're only asking for 20 or 30 million to invest in our team and build us for the long term. So I don't know, man. It becomes a very open grey area, like a massive explosion, almost like a spider web, because there's so many little bits that pull at that, and then that pulls that bit, and then that pulls that bit, and then that's connected. It gets frustrating and gets heated, man. This is why we need a little bit more open communication, we need to understand where we're coming from, because at least if they turn around and say, you know what, my income's X, I'm only willing to put this into the football club. All right, cool. Then we know what we're cooking with. But it just seems that sometimes we're almost like we're essentially the afterthought. We're like the disregarded thing in the corner. Like nobody want to go talk to us. Nobody wants to come and invest in us. Excuse me. Yeah. So
I agree.
You know, it does get frustrating, man.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing right now is that I think the majority of the fans just want. We hear these terms and we hear Steve Parish coming out and giving interviews here and there, and it sounds all good, but we want to know the actual long-term project. Like, what is the purpose? What's happening with the ownership group? There's been talks for months about John Texton not agreeing with Parish. There's been other stuff about Harrison Blitzer being interested in other clubs. There's so much uncertainty, it feels like, over the past year or so, that we don't know what's next with Palace. And I think that frustration behind the scenes of what's going on, and we're hearing multiple different stories from different angles. One owner wants to spend, another owner doesn't. This, that. We want to build a new... Like, I think the fans would be fine if we knew the actual project, if we knew what's going on in terms of behind the scenes, what they want to do. The main stand, yes, we get it, but what's happening with John Texton and Steve Parish? Is there a real issue there? If there isn't a real issue, then I'd rather they come out publicly and say, you know, we refuse these stories. But based on them not coming out, it seems like there is. So what's the solution to it? What are the disagreements? What is Textor unhappy about with Steve Parish? What is Steve Parish unhappy about with John Textor? Because we don't know the situation, we don't know how it will be solved. As it stands, we're going into next season with the same problems that we had last season with the ownership group. And I don't know how it changes other than maybe one buying the other one out or one of them leaving. Like, I just don't understand it. And that uncertainty factor is causing problems now, because we're talking about next season and the season after. We don't know what to expect because I don't think the owners know what they want to do with this football club. Harrison Blitzer being bidden for other teams. John Textor, we're hearing new things every other day about him and not having funds or being banned over you know, certain countries in Belgium. That's the most recent thing with him. And Parish. He's got a golden share. That's the reports, and he controls the things. Like, it would be nice to have a bit of clarity. Like, all of them together and maybe come out a joint statement. This is what we want to do. This is how I want to take the club forward. But it seems like just everyone's just doing their own thing. So like, oh, I'm not happy with him. I'm not happy. And the fans are just here, just wondering what's next. Like, we want to know as fans. And I think it's not a crazy thing to ask. Like, what is the long-term project apart from the main stand? The main stand is good, but the main stand is not going to generate hundreds of millions of new revenue. It would generate maybe a decent amount, but we're not building a new 80,000 seat capacity stadium. We're building a new stand. That's the reality of it. It's a new stand that's going to cost a lot, but it's not going to change the club for forever. I think the academy facility probably have a bigger impact because of the players that we can generate from it. But a new stand, I don't buy into. It's going to, you know, change our whole future for the football club. Corinne says there's a flip side. If we're vocal about transfer targets, we lose them to teams like West Ham. Yeah, 100% agree. You don't want to have everything public. Daniel says we have the most dysfunctional ownership besides the Glazers. Martin says Palace's bright future is based around our brilliant academy and developing our own players. Sean says our board never shows ambition. We've got a good squad that needs a couple of players to turn into a good squad shades of the team of the 80s again. So let's go through some of the other news quickly. We'll do a quick mention. So the latest with Zaha, according to the Daily Mail, is that the Saudi Pro League are reportedly to make a further pitch to Wilfried Zaha after the Palace star initially rejected a move to the Middle East. Paris Saint-Germain, Marseille, and Lazio are, you know, they've all made their pitch to the Ivory Coast star, whilst an initial bid from Al Nassr has been rejected by Zaha, so they're coming in once again for him. AJ, we'll see what happens with that. I don't want to, stick with it, but there's going to be another offer, so we'll see. We'll see with that. According to Alan Nixon, which is, I guess, this is a positive with the uncertainty that I've been talking about. Crystal Palace are focused on getting a striker at this stage of the transfer window, with the managerial situation sorted out. The Eagles are now focused on strengthening the squad in the ongoing transfer window. So, I guess the manager played a part to it, but I don't know why the manager should impact it, because it seems like we've been recruiting regardless of the new manager. But maybe we hear more striker news in the near-term future. And ended on a negative. Unfortunately, Crystal Palace are sweating on the fitness of Michael Olise after the winger suffered a hamstring injury whilst playing for France at the European Under-21 Championship. And I think only a few hours ago we've heard that he's going to be out for several of weeks. So hopefully he doesn't miss the start of the new season. So overall today, there's some positives. I guess we're focused on striker. Olise out injured. Zaha probably getting another offer. £21 million bid for a defender, and Roy Hodgson staying on. So depending on how you view things, there's some positives, some negatives there. But if you have enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to not miss out on future Palace content. We'll be back throughout the week. I know it's a bit of a late one today, so we're going to wrap it up now. Thanks to everyone who's joined us live and has been watching replay. And until next time, up the Palace.